Well, here on HQ, we are waiting for the moment for the #1 overall recruit, AJ Dybantsa, making his college decision this morning. He has some lists on there when it comes to the 6'9" forward out of Utah, a final list of Alabama, BYU, Kansas, and North Carolina. One of those kids that can start, honestly, in the NBA right now. The talent is up there when it comes to the Brandon Millers of the world, the Paul Georges of the world. Of course, we'll have the latest on that commitment, but take a look at it. This is final list of schools and their current rankings in class. Alabama, BYU, and Kansas, I mentioned. The Jayhawks would love to have them. That current class is 4, maybe bumping them up in that top 3. North Carolina, Hubert Davis and the crew can also use a 6'9" talent as well. For more on this, Adam Finklestein join us here. We're moments away to find out where AJ ends up, but what's the latest you can tell us about him and maybe the possibility of one of those 4 schools?
Well, I think there were 2 schools left in contention yesterday, really, and that was BYU and Alabama. And most people are expecting a BYU commitment here. Kevin Young has done a remarkable job since being named the program's head coach 7 months ago. They got Igor Demin, the celebrated international prospect out of Russia, in June. Kanan Catchings followed suit after his decommitment from Purdue. They got Xavier Staten last month, who was the highest-ranked domestic prospect ever to commit to the program. And AJ Dybantsa would be a historic pledge for BYU. Obviously, the first #1 overall prospect to ever commit to the program. You need 2 things to get that done in this day and age. You need a robust NIL program, and you also need a basketball situation that can convince players and families that their long-term well-being is in good hands. And that's exactly what Kevin Young and his NBA pedigree have been able to create since they arrived in Provo. In fact, they are dubbing this Provo, capital P, capital R, capital O. That has been the branding that they have utilized since arriving at BYU.
If it is BYU, he's saying no to Alabama and Nate Oates, UNC and Hubert Davis, and Kansas, the Jayhawks, they were Bill Self. How do they miss out if that's the case for him?
Well, again, this day and age of recruiting, things are going to start with the NIL commitment. And AJ Dybantsa was a player who was going to command. There's no way to tell definitively what this dollar value will be, but it was certainly expected to be an unprecedented amount, at least for a high school prospect. And so that in and of itself was a significant hurdle for anyone interested in pursuing him to try and get through. Those programs left standing. That was going to be a primary part of the recruitment, the process, the negotiation, whatever you want to call it. But that was definitely a requisite to get to the finalists here for AJ Dybantsa.
We got some breaking news, Adam. The news is in when it comes to AJ Dybantsa. He's heading to BYU, as we just mentioned it moments ago, heading to join them, the 6'9" talent and #1 overall prospect, AJ Dybantsa, heading there to BYU, saying no to Alabama, no to Kansas, and no to UNC. Of course, now this news out there, Adam, your reaction to this?
Absolutely huge for the BYU program, for Kevin Young. They talked about how it was a new day in program history when he took over 7 months ago. They are fulfilling that promise. This was something that would have been conceived really inconceivable until very recently, but BYU under Kevin Young is recruiting at an unprecedented level. Take this into consideration. This is the 3rd record-setting recruit in just 7 months. Igor Demin became the highest-ranked prospect to ever commit to the program in June. Last month, it was Xavier Staten who became the highest-ranked domestic prospect to ever commit to BYU. And now AJ Dybantsa, he shatters all the records. The first time the #1 overall prospect in high school basketball has committed to BYU. It is going to put the Cougar program on center stage of college basketball next year, because Dybantsa will enter college basketball with the expectation that he will be the #1 pick in the 2026 NBA draft.
For BYU, I mean, you would think, of course, as you said, this is a historical ad in addition there. Any chance they can land anybody else out there to join with AJ there at BYU?
Well, I don't think they're done yet. I think what you can expect is that they have a select few number of veterans who are going to come back and create some experience to surround this dynamic young talent with. But I would certainly expect them to be active in the transfer portal following the end of the season. Then the other thing we've seen is that they're going to be active in international recruiting. They do have Xavier Staten already in this class. He and Dybantsa give them a dynamic 1-2 punch. They do have some players coming back, but I do expect we will see them continue to be active this spring, and those will be the two major markets that I expect them to be really most active in, the transfer market and the international high school market, so to speak, at least in terms of incoming freshmen.
Adam, you've been all over this for the past couple of years, and you kind of touched on it there when it comes to the landscape, NIL, and things changing. You don't have to go to those big programs. We're just seeing that now with BYU and AJ Dybantsa taking his talents there to Utah. What does this mean for the future when you don't have to go to those blue-collar names and those big household names?
Well, this is a new era in recruiting, and it is an era in which if you want to get the highest ranked prospects in the country, in the world really at this stage, because of the prevalence of NIL, you're seeing more international prospects like Igor Demon coming over to play college basketball that might not have done so a few years ago. And it means, quite frankly, you need resources, or to put it more plainly, you need buying power. And if you don't have it, you're not going to be able to recruit these highest ranked prospects. Now, it's not just resources. Let me be clear about that. This also has a lot to do with Kevin Young, his NBA background, and the branding they have created. But you need to check both of those boxes. You need to have a robust NIL situation in order to attract and be able to sign the highest ranked prospects in the country, in the world. And then you also need to convince them that your development program is sufficient enough to get them to where they want to be. If you have the players, TV and exposure, that stuff's going to take care of itself. If you do not have those things, you do not have the players, then it's going to be business as usual. But it is anything but business as usual right now for BYU. This program is on a whole nother level in terms of the caliber of prospects they are able to attract.
Kevin Young, of course, spending time with the Phoenix Suns the past 3 years, and associate head coach there. Now at BYU, give me a comp. I'm not going to say Kevin Durant when it comes to AJ, but where do you see him fitting with those that play in the association?
Yeah, I think, he likes the Kevin Durant comp, but Kevin Durant is 3 or 4 inches taller. I think it's really maybe a more athletic Brandon Miller. AJ Dybantsa's best weapon is his mid-range pull-up. He rises up into that. He's got great rotation. He can get it wing isos. He can get it the mid-post. He's gradually starting to put more pressure on the rim. He's gradually extending that shooting range out to the three-point line. Now, I think he's more physically gifted than Brandon Miller at the same stage, so he's got another level of athletic pop of separation. But in terms of archetypes, think about a more athletic Brandon Miller, and that's a good place to start for AJ Dybantsa.
That is a scary comp there when it comes to AJ. Of course, can't wait to see him there at BYU. Adam Finklestein, appreciate you with the breaking news with AJ Dybantsa taking his talents to BYU. And what does that mean for the recruiting ranks? I want to take a look at it across the country, and you see it right there. BYU at number 11. Of course, you heard Adam there. They're not done when it comes to recruiting. A lot of that from Kevin Young, who's bringing that NBA type of mindset to the college level here in year 1 for the Cougars. We'll see if they can keep up with those in the top 10, such as Duke, even Notre Dame, and even SMU jumping them in the rankings. When we come back, we're not done with AJ Dybantsa to BYU. Our Matt Norlander will join Zach Aldridge with more on this coverage.
It is the breaking news that we are continuing to monitor here on HQ. The #1 overall recruit in the class of 2025, AJ Dybantsa, has committed to BYU. The 6'9" forward out of Utah, choosing BYU over the likes of Alabama, Kansas, North Carolina. Dybantsa figures to be the top pick come the 2026 draft for the NBA. But now for the college ranks, that 5-star can do it all will be heading over to Provo, Utah to really change up the landscape of college basketball as we know it with this shocking decision of Dybantsa to BYU. Now bringing our college basketball expert, Matt Norlander. And Matt, I saw the tweet that you put out, said BY freaking you for where Dybantsa has chose. How much of a just seismic shift in college basketball is this decision right here?
It's big. If you want the purest evidence that name, image, and likeness earnings capabilities are altering the dynamics of college sports, this is it. AJ Dybantsa is from Massachusetts. He is currently finishing out his high school career playing at a prep school in Utah. And he has a big-time opportunity to be the most impactful player potentially in the history of BYU's program, at least in a single season aspect. Danny Ainge obviously was once upon a time a big-time recruit, multi-sport recruit. And in fact, Danny Ainge, a former GM with the Boston Celtics, has known about AJ Dybantsa for a good while here. And the fact that now Danny Ainge is working with the Utah Jazz is certainly no coincidence there. BYU has no shortage of NIL resources, and that was a very big factor, I'm told, by a number of sources here. I'm also told that Dybantsa's NIL package expected to exceed $5 million, and if and when that is indeed the case, it would be acknowledged as a record-setting deal, particularly not just in this era, but there's a real chance that Dybantsa might be set to earn more money heading into college than really any player ever, even back when this wasn't legal and allowable, because it's such a huge sum of money here. In fact, I had sources tell me that Alabama was not able to match BYU's price. North Carolina gave a very, very, very hard pitch, but that fell short. They pitched Dybantsa on Michael Jordan, Vince Carter, Jerry Stackhouse. You can be the next superstar to wear Carolina blue. You can do for your brand what Zion Williamson did for his by choosing Duke over Clemson. Ultimately, though, Dybantsa wasn't a guy that wanted to play for a blue blood. He goes to BYU. This is a very intriguing development for college basketball, to have someone of this talent choose a place that frankly almost never gets, 5-star or even borderline 4-star level talent. But Kevin Young is the coach there. And Kevin Young is a first-year coach, and he just spent the past 8 seasons working on an NBA sideline. And Dybantsa, knowing what Kevin Young just recently did with Kevin Durant, those also played significant factors.
Yeah, Young, the associate head coach with the Suns from 2021 to 2024, and spent time as an assistant before that. Know that KD is Dybantsa's favorite player, and Dybantsa made the change from originally being from Massachusetts, went over to California, played ball over there, and now in Utah. So could we read through the tea leaves and see, okay, while this is shocking, maybe not as shocking since he's playing that prep level ball for his final year in high school in Utah?
Yeah, there's 2 things to evaluate here. On one hand, this is breaking news. We're talking about the #1 player in the country who's from Massachusetts choosing to play at BYU. We don't normally get kind of stuff like this. But if you've been following Dybantsa's path here, BYU has been the favorite for 3, 4, 5 months at this point. And the fact that he wound up choosing BYU over Alabama and UNC essentially were the 2 other ones that were closest down the stretch, even though Kansas was also a finalist. This is not a stunner, but big picture-wise, it's intriguing. Now, we'll see if this can go well for Dybantsa next season, because remember, Ben Simmons chose LSU. It was a flame out there. Currently, right now, Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, they both might be top 5 picks in next year's draft, but Rutgers isn't a surefire NCAA tournament team. I'd sure like to see it. There are incredible talents there. But again, you've got high-level talents that picked a spot that normally doesn't recruit in and land top 5 players. We'll see what happens there. Anthony Edwards, he's just an incredible NBA player. Where did he go to college? Some people might struggle to remember because he played at Georgia and a terrible Georgia team. So we'll see if Dybantsa's scoring ability in combination with Kevin Young and that NBA scheme can really get BYU to be not just relevant, but really, really, really good. It's important to note that Dybantsa is considered a prospect with a super high ceiling. I mean, I polled a number of NBA folks over the summer and asked them, if you were taking a player's future right now, would you take Cooper Flagg, AJ Dybantsa, or Tyron Stokes, who's another really, really good player in the following class? And Dybantsa got more votes than Flagg and Stokes combined. It's thought that he has a really good chance to one day lead the NBA in scoring. He could be impactful to the level where he leads the nation in scoring next season as a freshman if he truly does get the keys to that BYU offense and has an ultimate green light, which is the expectation. So super intriguing times, and a reminder that in this NIL era, it doesn't mean that the Blue Bloods always are going to prosper on the recruiting trail. If you get the right people and the right money and the right recruitments lined up here, we've really got a variety of different kind of schools that can land these top 5, top 3, or in this case, #1 overall prospects. And to me, I think that's a really great thing for college basketball.
So then I'm wondering, $5 million, we're saying going to Dybantsa, how much could this might be a ground-shaking movement in what we see in college basketball now in this NIL era, where schools maybe, okay, we don't have as much money to give out for football contracts because there's so many people on the roster, but I want to get a top 1, a top 2 type player and bring them in. Could you see more of this happening now with shelling out $5 million to bring a guy in for 1 or 2 years and really make a run for March?
I mean, it's possible. The Boozer twins are going to go play at Duke next season, and Cameron Boozer in particular is an outstanding player, and I'm sure that he's set to be rewarded handsomely for this, but not on the level, from what I've been told, as Dybantsa. This is actually a very complex issue, Zach. Remember that revenue sharing is supposed to be coming to college athletics by the start of next season. Now, if it happens, we'll see. Under what terms, we'll see. By that, though, schools and conferences will not all be paying the same amount of money to the same kind of basketball players and the same kind of football players. No one knows how fully that's going to work, but I bring this up because it's very important to put this into context here. Once revenue sharing gets here, you know, what the average player at BYU might be making is going to be different from what the average player at Kentucky is making versus what the average player at Syracuse and on down the road in basketball, let alone in football. But that is going to have an impact on how these athletic department works, and there is going to be renewed guidelines and scrutiny over how NIL collectives work and how they wind up paying players. Frankly, in my opinion, the market is still going to dictate this, and players are still going to be able to make a lot of money off of their name, image, and likeness, as they well should. But it remains to be seen whether or not Dybantsa's humongous NIL package winds up being a unique type of thing, or if going forward in the years ahead at the highest levels of college recruiting at the high school level in basketball and in football, we start seeing players, you know, routinely being able to bring in $3, $4, $5 million. Because it's important to note, Dybantsa already has deals with Red Bull, and he has a multi-year deal that's lucrative with Nike because he truly has name, image, and likeness value. He actually has it. A lot of these players that are signing NIL deals with collectives that are doing it through the portal, they don't carry that much amount of value. Dybantsa is an exception to the rule, and he may we might look back, you know, 5 years from now and see that him, Cooper Flagg, and maybe 1 or 2 other players really separated themselves because of how well known they were going into college.
So Dybantsa, of course, is shaking everything up by deciding to go over to BYU. And I'm curious from like a basketball standpoint next year, because he said during his commitment that he wants to win a national championship. That is the goal, and he plans on being a one-and-done player. But you look at BYU, they're 6-2 right now. The 2 losses to a ranked Ole Miss team and to Providence. This is who's coming in. Will BYU have the opportunity to truly compete and win next year? Because as you mentioned, we've seen it not necessarily work for guys like you mentioned earlier from everyone that you said earlier. How do you see that?
Yeah, Ben Simmons at LSU, Anthony Edwards at Georgia. We'll see what happens at Rutgers. You see this here and there, but it can work out, absolutely. I think that Dybantsa has the potential to have Carmelo Anthony-like impact on the sport for BYU. I'm not saying I think BYU is going to be among the 5 most likely teams to win a national championship at the start of next season. I don't think that'll be the case. I'll also bring up the fact that Kevin Young right now has a potential top 5 pick on his roster. Igor Demin, an international prospect, has been pretty tremendous so far, and it's hard to see himself playing out of even the lottery come June of next year. So they are building a certain culture, and Kevin Young having that NBA experience is really going to go a long way. So given Dybantsa's incredible scoring potential, I mean, he is long, awesome in the mid-range, Kevin Durant-esque in the mid-range. I'm not saying he's Kevin Durant. I'm saying his traits greatly resemble that, and that is opinion shared by a lot of people at the NBA level. If he can become an even better three-point shooter, he's got a chance to be a real game wrecker and a must-see kind of player in a league, by the way, the Big 12, which this season is taking a backseat to the SEC. You know, the Big 12 has been the best league in men's college basketball for the majority of the past decade, almost every single season. This season, the SEC is by far the best league in in college hoops. Maybe a year from now, the Big 12 takes that perch back, and in doing so, Dybantsa might have a big say in that.
Yes, 6'9", can do it all, and we will get to see it up close and personal next year when he plays for BYU. Matt Norlander, thank you so much joining us as that breaking news has now hit the earth for us right now with Dybantsa. And for even more from that college landscape, make sure you tap in with 24/7 Sports, because they have everything covered from that wall-to-wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, transfer portal just opened up for college football, and everything is online for you there.